try again. Perfect. All right. So should be all set. And so I have Moon Knight with me, and we're gonna do an overview of one of my favorite characters in the entire game, which is Magdelina. Moon
Hi
Knight,
guys.
what do you think of Maggie?
I mean, Maggie's kind of scary, and I loved Maggie when online was a thing. When it ended, I haven't played her as much. But the current Maggie is like the same thing, right?
Yeah, as
It's
BCO. So she's a little better,
yeah,
but
yeah. I mean, yeah. But she's good. She's good. She's
she's miles
a
better
solid option.
from version 3, though. Like, the BCO
Oh
version
yeah.
was. She's playable now, as opposed to before.
Oh yeah.
So yeah,
That's
let me.
uh yeah. She's upgraded a lot since like version 1.0. Which I don't know how many people have played, so let's leave it at that.
God, I don't even know. I don't know if I ever played 1.0. I think I had to have played like version 2 or something. Um,
Yeah.
version
So
1.0, you
so
started 3 spaces away, right?
yeah, right. And spiritual was 0 -2 -2 0, I think, and it was just level up, and her level up system was different. So yeah, she was way different. But we're not talking about that original.
Yeah. Well, I am gonna bring it up when we talk about blessing because that was.
Yeah, sure,
But
sure.
so just for anybody who is not watching it, I'll just read out what her UA is. Magdalena gains trance counters over time. She can spend trance to level up, giving and making her more powerful. So setup, activate level 0. Level 0 just says power, prio, guard, all 0. During the recycle phase, you spend 2 trance to level up. Um, so to level up, you spend tr- that trance each time, and at the end of each turn, you'll regain a trance. And the only thing tricky about her level up is normally it's you spend however much trance to go to the next level. So at level 1, you spend um, 2 trance to go to level 2. At level 2, you spend 3 trance to go to level 3, etc. The only difference is level 0, in that you have to spend 2 trance to go to level 1. And she gets +1 power, prio, and guard each time. Like, she's a very simple character to understand. Um,
Yeah.
but she's one of my favorite characters just because her game, because of how weak she is early and how powerful she is late, she has this feeling of Battlecon that I don't. That's, in my opinion, unlike any other character, right? Because at the beginning
I
you're not
mean,
playing real Battlecon, and at the end, hopefully, you're not playing real Battlecon.
no. Basically, once you're level 2 or 3, like the middle levels
Yeah,
somewhere, you can start talking about playing like Fear Battlecon.
correct.
And once you're at level 4, you should be able to beat all your opponent's attack clears.
Correct.
Probably.
Yeah, and the only thing really that's different is once you start to get level 4, level 5, do you have enough life to survive a trade, right? Um,
Right.
but you
Can
don't.
you avoid trading? I mean, if you're level, let's say you're level 3, you have +3 on everything, and add that to switch, it's still crazy, right?
Yeah, it's still
It's
level. There are certain characters that can fight you at level 3, but like level 1 and level 2, level 0 and level 1, you're not. You can't really win trades. You can't play real Battlecon. You have to play like
yeah.
this. Don't lose a beat kind of game, which is very different from how you would normally do it. And then at level 3, level 4, you're just trying to land. Everything you do is a haymaker, so you're just like trying to manage your hit confirm to make sure that you can close them out.
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
let's start with her styles, and
Sure.
I guess the first I'll start with what I think is the most utilitarian style, like the style that she needs to have in order to play, which is Excelsius, right? Some of her other styles do other things that are very important, but Excelsius is the one that has like her utility on it, and it's +0 to 1 for the range. Power is -2. Get used to that. Prio is -1. Guard is +0. Before optional, you can advance or retreat 1. Also, before, if you're at range 3+, this attack doesn't hit, so it has a max range of what? 2, right?
I mean,
Plus
yeah,
-1. And then at hit, if you're level 2 or higher, optional, you can push 1 to 2.
yeah.
Uh,
So
yeah.
yeah, I
Tell me what
mean,
you think about Excelsius for both, like, as a style for Maggie, but in relation to the rest of her kit, too.
so yeah, I mean, Excelsius has always been her best style. I think it's been like the one you think about when playing, giving range and hitting and stuff like that. You tend to be at melee range just with Magdalena once you want to. So Excelsius is just like amazing at that.
Yeah, it's almost like you
Yeah,
have to be at melee range with Maggie, as opposed to tend to. There are a lot of games that if you get out of melee range, you're in deep trouble.
yeah. So there's some cute thing you can do because both her triggers are before, so you
Yep.
can trigger the before range 3+. This attack does not hit, then retreat 1 to range 3 and hit with a blessing still, and stuff like that.
Am I? Oh my god, I didn't. Dude, I don't.
So
I don't think I've realized that because I'm so used to BCO that even in level 4, I don't think I realized what you just told me, and you've opened up a whole new world of Maggie for me.
so yeah, there are some cute things you can do. Um, yeah,
Well, that's crazy, actually. Now that
just
because I haven't think like you could set this up with like into a sanctimonious turn with the push. I didn't even think of that.
yeah, yeah, yeah. And you can also do like, let's say your opponent has some kind of counter move, and uh,
Oh, so you could just
you don't
dodge it.
want. Yeah, you can actually like if you have Excelsius drive into a position where you don't really want it, and you just want to like move over but don't hit, you can actually like trigger before range 3+, and then move over him and miss him for some reason.
Oh wow, yeah.
I
Because you
mean,
won't
it's
hit no
not
matter what.
common.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's not common, but it's there. So
I guess like if
some
you're playing against like Astral or something, I could see wanting to do that.
I mean, there are reasons, right?
Yep.
Mikhail, for example, if you
Yes.
if you're up against Mikhail who plays what's his I deal a lot of damage if you hit me style, but I can't
Uh,
remember right now.
Transcendent.
Yeah, yeah, Transcendent. There you go. And you really
Technically,
don't
if you're
want.
up against Press too, but if you're up against Cadenza's Magdalena, I'm not sure that this is going to save you either.
I mean, Excelsius is kind of good against Cadenza
The
because it has
pushes,
the one push. Yeah.
yeah,
So, but
but
yeah, yeah.
Cadenza's
I
whole
mean,
kit is kind of good against Magdalena.
yeah, I know. Cadenza is kind of good against Magdalena since she has no like I stun you with the
Yep.
exception of her finisher. But yeah, we'll get back to that later.
Yeah, so we'll talk more about how she plays, I guess, after we talk a little bit more about her kit.
Yeah,
So let's then talk about Sanctimonious because this was a change from BCO, I believe. Some of it was. So Sanctimonious has 0 to 1 static range, -1 power, -2 priority. So this is kind of different from the rest of her styles in that it has more, technically more power but less prio. So -1 power, -2 prio, and then +0 guard. As a before effect, she gets +0 to X range, where X is half the number of held trounce rounded up. So
yeah,
if you have 0, you obviously get 0. But if you have 1, you get +1 range. If you have 2, you get +1 range. 3, you get +2. 4, you get +2. And then 5, you get 3, etc.
yeah, yeah. I mean, Sanctimonious is her only ranged option, so
Yep.
be careful with it. But it's like good. It's a solid option.
Well, it's not just her only. One of the things that comes up, I think, with Sanctimonious that I find super useful is that -2 prio. Compared to the rest of her kit, like
Yeah,
her other styles, you really need to have. a priority that is different than -1.
Yeah,
So
and
the
it's good to have
Sanctimonious to
those.
dodge the clash, it ends up being really important to her kit.
Yeah, it's all dependent on what's your matchup, right? Because Sanctimonious is sometimes her like maybe not most important style, but up there, right?
Yes, like if
It's
she
really
doesn't
good.
have this style, she's probably unplayable actually. Oh,
Well, she needs something like it. Original Sanctimonious was very different, but on the other hand, originals Magdelina was very different. So yeah,
give me one moment here. I think Ash might be joining
yeah.
us.
Ashley's joining us. Yay!
Maybe if I can figure out how to work a keyboard.
That seems difficult for me.
It does. Whenever. Bam.
Alright.
But yeah, so
Can you
we'll wait
guys
to see if he is able to
can you guys
join.
hear me?
Hey Ash, what's
I,
up?
Hi,
hi,
hi, hi.
Ash.
So Ash, my eternal rival, is also a Magdalena main, right? So why I wanted to specifically have Ash is Ash and I both love Magdalena more than is reasonable. And we play kind of differently, I feel. Our Magdalenas aren't super similar.
No, not at all. They are actually they are like black and white.
Shocking nobody ever. I tend to play a risky Magdalena. Yeah, about that. So
Risky.
Ash, we just went over just like her UA, and we were talking about Excelsius and how important it is. And then we actually just got done talking with about Sanctimonious. The first
Alright.
question that I had for you is if you had known this thing that Charles just told us or told me about. Did you know that you can use the before range 3 in version 4 to like trigger that and then move back to still hit by ordering your triggers correctly? Because it's like I should have known that,
Alright.
but I
Yeah,
don't think I've ever thought of that since I'm just so used to
yeah.
the BCO Excelsius.
With the Excelsius, yeah.
I mean, it's still only relevant for blessing and shot, but you know,
Sure. Yeah,
uh,
Excelsius shot.
I guess.
That
But
was
Excelsius
what I
Blessing
was thinking.
is a fairly common play, so I mean it's not irrelevant.
No. I mean,
No,
it
yeah.
works with Excel first, I guess, if you really want it. But yeah, it's awkward.
Truth.
With yeah, it is a bit awkward, yeah. But
Yeah.
Excelsius shot is very uncommon, but
Yeah.
sometimes it has its uses, and in those times you can, yeah. I don't know, like I'm not sure if abuse is the right word, but you can use that trick,
Yeah.
if anything, yeah. And
Absolutely.
Excelsius Burst is an amazing pair, and you should play it more often.
I
Twilight.
do like Excelsius Burst. Um, I guess my only problem with Excelsius Burst is, and maybe this is just too tricky, but it feels like telegraphed um, as like an obvious pair a lot of the time.
The problem with Excelsius Burst is that if your opponent has shot, it just eats it. But I guess, you know, they don't always have shot, so.
Yeah,
Sure.
that is true. That is true. It's just Excelsius is such a good style, and
Oh, yeah.
Magdalena is capable of playing fast bursts, and a fast burst is one of the more OP things you can have on Battlecon.
Yeah.
Truth. That is very true. And then we were also talking about Sanctimonious and just like how important, like it's hard to say which is more important. I think Excelsius is like the workhorse of Magdalena's kit, um, but Sanctimonious might be like the linchpin that holds everything together.
Yeah.
Like the
I
thing
don't know.
that lets you have a different prio, gives you range in otherwise her very not range oriented kit.
I think safety is also tremendous on her kit.
I actually have safety as like the dead center of her kit, right? Like the effect is super powerful and super good, but I guess that there are times when like safety is good for giving me options ahead of time, but I don't know if I would consider it more important than Sanctimonious, if only because being at some point being -1 prio along with Priestess Excelsius and safety is kind of an issue.
All right. So what I like about safety, and what I think goes like a little bit undervalued, is that for a character that is such a melee focused character, right? You absolutely want to be range 1 pretty much always.
Yep.
And safety is the style that says the next beat you are at range 1 100%. And that is very, very valuable.
Yes. We were Moon Knight and I were talking about how you tend to be at melee range a lot with Magdelina, and it's you have to be, right? So yeah, this is a great time to just talk about safety. Range 0, power -2 once again, prio -1, guard 0. You cannot take more than X damage, where X is 3 plus your current level. So at level 0 you can only take 3. 1 you can take 4, 2, etc. Right? At the end of the turn, if you were hit, and it is optional, you can advance or retreat 1 to 3.
Yeah.
So I guess the thing about safety that I really like to threaten is like I like to threaten safety blessing turn 1. I don't actually play it that often because it has a lot of like weaknesses and holes, but I think it's one if you're it's specifically very good against their strikes, which they want to do to like max their damage against Magdelina, but it's very bad against their bursts and whatnot.
Yeah. So there's there is an important part in Magdalena's play as well, and that is safety blessing and strike all having 3 priority. So clashing out like safety blessing turn 1, or like attempting to clash out your dash can actually work in your favor if you know what you're doing and you feel like you have your opponent's red. So you can actually like clash out things with safety and then end with a safety blessing or safety dash or whatever you want.
Yeah, that is like the turn 1 dance, because what it comes up most is turn 1 with this -1 prio, and the fact that blessing is also 3 prio. That you're good. You're the dodges that, and you don't usually want to switch dodge because switch is actually one of your best styles. So like you need this prio 2 spot turn 1. You need to have like if you're doing something like safety dodge is maybe not it, but you have a lot of prio 2 things that clashing out ends up being sometimes great, sometimes awful.
Fair enough.
So
I mean,
yeah, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, Ash, I don't know if I set this correct, but we're just staring at that. So let me just show you. Oh, not that. I will just share my screen. Here we go.
So what I was going to say about safety, and this is more like on my playstyle, on my Magdalena, that you very much love, Twy, is that one of the stars that I like to pair, or rather, one of the bases I like to pair a lot with safety is shot, because shot has the hit confirm, right? Drive as well, but drive is more situational. But with shot, because shot has stun guard, and you can anti for more guard.
Yes.
And so it is very, very hard to stun out Magdalena. She can trade, Depending on her level, she might even be able to trade up with shot. And because of the end of beat movement that safety has, you guarantee that on the next beat you are ranged 1 and all your styles are basically online.
Yeah. There is one last thing to safety, because this is usually like a level 1, level 2, level 0 to level 2 basically. Then you keep it in hand. But if your opponent has a worrisome finisher that deals like 10 damage or whatever, remember that safety actually can trigger later.
Yes. Like,
Since
and it seems crazy to say like only taking 7, but like only taking 7 is still only 7, not like 10.
Yeah, you never have to worry about the one-hit KO effects that deals like 20 damage or whatever. You're just like, okay, I can actually attempt to play, because if you're at level 3 or level 4, where we're now talking like, only 7 damage, you still survive with a safety something, and you get to the reposition like we talked about. So there is a reason to play safety later on in the game. It just becomes less obvious when to play it.
Sure.
But yeah, it's there.
Now,
I've escaped a lot of I don't know, like on Battlecon, I've escaped a lot of Red Moon rages and level 4 protocols just by safetying it up and just like, yeah, let's take it up. Actually,
13 not the same as 7, or 7 not the same as 13.
Yeah,
I guess you
yeah.
lose.
Actually, against the Caesar, I played a safety strike anti-power, and believe it or not, I traded up against this finisher, the level 4 protocol, which is mind-blowing, but yeah.
Seems reasonable.
Seems reasonable. Before we go, so it's good that you mentioned that safety is usually an early style, because we'll talk about Priestess in a minute, which is her late game style. How often do you spend force, or like early with Magdelina as opposed to in specific spots? I tend to use my force as Maggie, like even turn 1, turn 2. I tend to use my particularly for stun guard. Very early, and I don't care about it aside from counteranding prio late.
I feel like Maggie is a different character than most, because you use the +2 stun guard a lot.
Yep.
Yeah.
While the characters like never use it.
The blessing of Kashin.
Yeah. But it's like use anti-stun guard to a reasonable amount of time. I mean, if you're at level 2 and want to go with a semi-fast like drive or something, and you're not sure you're going to make it, you can actually anti-stun guard and have stun guard 4, which is reasonable. So
yeah, but like early, I will do a lot of, like I'll do like a sanctimonious blessing anti-stun guard on turn 1.
Yeah, that's fair.
I think I anti-stun guard just a lot on turn 1. Like if I've decided that I'm not going to dodge that turn, like man, I want to say I might anti-stun guard something like 50% of the time on turn 1.
Yeah, that's
when
fair.
I'm not dodging.
I mean, yeah, maybe not on turn 1, but I'll anti a lot of stun guard. She has good stun guard, right?
Yeah.
And
she has more stun guard than most characters.
Yeah. And I think on the later beats, I will anti almost always power, which is like a way to,
break their stun guard, break their strikes.
Yeah, and just basically came to come into a balance from the lost first beats, right? So like in your first beat, I take 3 damage for free because I am playing like right now I'm playing the worst character ever, and later on I'll be playing the best character ever. And when I'm playing the best character ever, if I anti 3, like if I anti for power 3 beats in a row and I connect then that's the 3 life I lost for free on the first beats. And I don't think I ever, or very very rarely, I anti for prio on Magdelina.
Yeah, I find that I only ever want to be able to counter anti-prio. I don't ever actually want to anti-prio naked. And if I do anti-prio, it's usually because I just want to drain their force because I am...
The resources.
Yeah, because I'm going to be using Switch throughout the game, almost more than they will, and almost always to better effect. So I'm going to get a force advantage through the use of Switch at some point.
I feel like during a game that's usually takes itself out. Like you're usually anti-stun guard like twice a game or something.
Yeah,
that's probably
And
reasonable.
that is basically the same amount of time you use Switch. Like so you get the force back, and other than that, plus power is always relevant, and plus priority is super relevant in some matchups, but those are kind of rare. So yeah.
Well, yeah, beating Maggie level 2, level 3. I mean, obviously higher than that too, but like beating her on prio becomes almost impossible for someone who isn't like, Arya Schecter, Demetros.
I mean, if you're level 2, you can start talking about characters like Hikaru, for example, which is now we're talking like even priority, which is kind of interesting since he has wind and stuff like that. But I mean, it's extreme examples. If you're going up against moderate slow characters like Eric, whatever, basically go to like, oh, I'm gonna win most of the time. And yeah, it's up there.
So then, if safety is like her really good early style, right? Because they want to smash you. Almost everyone discards dodge, which is probably 100% correct. Not probably, almost is 100% correct against Magdelina. Priestess has to be her like payout late game style that isn't the remaining two, which we'll talk about in a second. Priestess is 0 range, that same -2 power, -1 prio, 0 guard, and as a hit effect, you gain armor 2 and regain 1 life. So what do you guys think about Priestess in general, I guess?
Yeah. So Priestess is a lot better than you think it is. I tend to play like Priestess Grasps.
Yep.
Turn level 0, level 1. Because people tend never to go above 5 priority or treat Grasp as it's not a thing on Magdelina.
Correct.
Because
it deals 0 damage, but...
Yeah, it deals 0 damage, but it's like basically gain 3 life.
Well, not on turn 1, but... Oh, well, you wouldn't play it on turn 1, but I get what you're saying, because you're right. People forget armor 2 gain 1 life is, that 3 differential is essentially just like +3 power. I mean, not 100%, but really close.
Yeah. And the thing is, you gain repositioning your opponent. So a thing that's kind of common is that your opponent goes into the corner and basically says, haha, I'm going to do a powerful shot because you can't get it away from me. And then you just Priestess Grasp, throw them over yourself, and next turn you have a dash up and... dodge or whatever. And then you have like wasted Priestess, which most people seem to be like the bad style early game, with taking minimum damage, and you're kind of good.
Yeah, I would still say that based on the rest of her kit, like Safety and Priestess are I would call her quote unquote bad styles, but they're not that bad. They have their specific niches. But I think that's just because of how important the other 4 are.
I mean, Priestess comes in as a pseudo spiritual with without the risks of spiritual, but with a more heavy reward, right? The armor 2 and
Yep.
gain 1 life. Although the armor 2 was a big nerf because -2 power is infinitely
Significantly
more
better,
powerful. Yeah,
Oh yeah.
yeah.
I mean,
Yeah, but we got this buff just to like being able to level up like
Sure.
So-
It evens out. It evens out. Yeah. But in matchups, so when you are playing like against tanks or like characters that are slow, right? If you do like a cycle of safety, priestess, and dodge, it's very very hard for them to do anything to Magdalena, just on account of priestess. Be-
do I think that that's your strategy for going up against the heavies. I don't know if I 100% think it's super hard for them to do anything, just because of like the first 5 turns that they don't have to really worry about doing anything other than swinging for the fences every time. But
sure.
I would agree with that is like a key part of your strategy against heavies.
Yeah. And against like characters that have counter styles, like Mikhail's Transcendence or Edie's Astral. I think it's
Yep.
what's the name in that?
Yeah, it's
Like if you
Astral,
take damage, you
Transcendent,
do
and
damage.
Frost.
Yeah. Priestess just wrecks their day. It's just like, yeah,
Yes,
you
it
thought
does.
you're going to trade up? Yeah, no, sorry, not happening.
yeah.
I was teaching a friend how to play, who has picked Irie as their main. And
Ari?
yeah, and I was just showing him like every time he would Astral, I would Priestess just on the hard read.
Oh
And
man,
he was getting
yeah.
so upset. I'm just like, yeah, this card exists. So
And
So
yeah,
yeah.
and
we called it the pseudo, and let's move on to the big scary. And it's funny to call this the big scary when you read it without knowing kind of like how Magdalena works. But it's spiritual is 0 +0 range, +1 power, +1 prio, +0 guard, and then it has the drawback: if this attack did not hit, you cannot gain trance or level up this turn. And it
Yeah.
is the big payout. Uh,
It is.
okay, so let's what do you think? What do you think about spiritual in relation to Maggie's Skit?
Should I
what I
start?
think.
Yeah,
Yeah,
MK.
go ahead.
Okay, so spiritual is like it's the most interesting style Maggie has. It's just pure stats, but that's all that Maggie. I mean, not all that Maggie is, but it is what Maggie is at her core, right? So it's more of what she is. And the problem with spiritual is that it's basically always spiritual shot.
Sometimes it's
Or
spiritual
drive.
drive for what it's worth.
Yeah, but that's what I'm saying, right? So it's people tend to say it's spiritual drive or spiritual shot, right?
100%.
And the all other options are kind of like subpar or
Yes.
so. And spiritual shot or spiritual drive becomes readable at some point in the game. The problem is not all characters like the problem is that all characters can't deal with it.
Correct.
But
No, that's how Maggie is,
yeah,
right?
that
You have
is
to
how
beat her
Maggie
before
works,
she
right?
gets to spiritual shot for 1,000,000.
Yeah, exactly. Meanwhile, there are characters that you'll never be able to play spiritual because they have effects like you miss at range 1 or can't hit if I'm at the other side of the table or between this token or whatever,
Yes.
And due to that, if you're playing against a character which has all of these things, spiritual basically becomes a dead card. It's like you can't even like put it down on a dash because well, you can't get trans or level up. It kind
I
of
will
sucks.
say that you can, and I have done it in one specific scenario where you don't want to level up, so you have extra range with Sanctimonious, but that
Oh
is
yeah, I mean
super
that
rare.
is like it's a thing that can happen, but that's basically giving you +2 range at
Yeah.
the time, so 0 to 3. I guess.
It's super rare. You should almost never do it.
It is very situational. It can also work with our finisher, the Solar Soul, which discards trance tokens. So you have one more trance token because you don't level up or something like that. So you have more trance tokens.
Exactly. So,
but that's very situational. Yeah,
it's very very
finisher. But like we're talking about spiritual, I thought spiritual shot was her finisher.
I mean, it is.
Yeah, it is. Yeah,
it is a clashable finisher, which makes it slightly worse. But I mean, let's face it. Let's say you're level 4 as Magdelina playing spiritual shot. It's still like +5 power, +5 priority to your shot. So 7 priority, 8 damage shot seems reasonable.
A lot of characters you stack gate them out can't win. With her being balanced around the fact that they should be able to try to beat you before you get to that point.
Exactly.
Yeah. I don't know if an 8 power shot is reasonable is the right word, but let's go with it.
Sure. But so this brings up kind of, and I want to normally like we would do a full thing on spiritual and they move to switch, but I actually think that because they're actually kind of similar, switch is just for Magdelina, switch is spiritual light, right? This card is absurd for it's possibly her best style, possibly.
I don't know. I'll put it like 3rd, 4th best style, maybe. Yeah.
I do a lot of switch drives. Switch
bursts. I do a lot of switch with Magdelina just because spiritual exists. So one thing that is very important about spiritual is that you don't have to play it. It just has to exist. Because it exists, it makes people play in a certain way, right?
Correct.
So for example, if you play against a Shektur and you have spiritual in your hand, it might be risky enough, but Shektur knows that because you have spiritual in your hand, for example, right? She needs to either play jugular or either to like anti at least 2 malice to guarantee that she will go faster. So spiritual can condition players and characters to play in a certain way that they might not be very comfortable playing as.
I will say that I definitely, because I tend to play against, in the community, I tend to play against a lot of the same players. I will spiritual at not optimal times, like risky spirituals, just so they are aware that, like, if they are playing against my Magdelina, they actually have to be worried about a spiritual that nobody would seem to rationally play, because it's risky, because they have a burst, or because they could dodge at that point. And you have to show it to make it a threat if you play against the same people.
And because of that, I'm just to finish up, there's no way that +1 power and +1 priority are on equal footing to 1 more force.
No, they're not.
Spiritual is... Yeah, spiritual is much better, but the thing is, spiritual can be a dead card. Switch is never a dead card, and that's why you could argue that switch is like there. That said, there's a reason that people always talk about spiritual shot. It's crazy.
Right, spiritual shot is... it has the only thing better than spiritual shot, like iconic wise, I have to think, is clockwork shot, right? Like clockwork shot, I would say they're not the same, right? Clockwork is better than spiritual by a lot, but
no. If you play Maggie and you never play the spiritual drive on level 5, then man, get to do it. It's so much fun.
Reaching Prior 10 is crazy. But this is kind of the thing about Maggie. It's huge stats all day, every day. People tend to forget that you can actually play spiritual at level 2. A spiritual grasp at level 2 out prioritizes basically everything and tends to stun people out. But you don't do it because it seems so risky, and what if your opponent bursts? Oh.
So it's
When-
funny
When you were
mention
talking,
that.
yeah.
This is one of the reasons I wanted to have Ash on. Charles, I want you to settle, and we're just going to say a standard discard debate, because Ash and I have
Oh,
a very an ongoing debate.
Oh, man.
So standard discards for Maggie.
Sure.
Before we go into that, I just wanted to point out when Charles talked about when characters corner themselves and then just go, aha, now I'm going to do like a super shot and you can't do anything about it. And he talked about Priestess Grasp, right?
Yeah, spiritual grasp.
Which nullifies a lot. But
Yeah.
you can actually make a mix-up which you either respect my Priestess Grasp or you either respect my Spiritual Strike. And Spiritual Strike is a buttload of damage.
Yeah, that's very true. That is a very good point. That is 100% for that corner mix-up. I can't tell you how many times I've thought, am I going to Priestess Grasp, Spiritual Strike, or try some weird hopeful clash chain that doesn't usually work because I have Pryos into the Stratosphere.
Safety burst and then retreat to the other side and hope your opponent has the range of.
And the thing is, because now like Magdelina can level up on B1 and stuff like that, even if you whiff one spiritual per game, it's not that big of a deal.
you can afford to whiff one spiritual, I would say. It's a lot harder if you do, obviously, but I think you can afford to win. I don't know if you can ever afford to really miss two of them.
I would say that it's depending on what your opponent does on that spiritual beat. If he dashes, you're probably fine because then it's a null beat.
Yeah.
If he hits you for 4 or 5, you're slightly worse off.
Yeah, agree.
And so Switch is kind of like, unlike most characters who this style doesn't mean anything. Like, same thing with Demetros. As for us, the style means a whole bunch to Magdelina, right?
Oh yeah.
So where I wanted to talk is most people, because they don't care about Switch, discard Switch. My quote unquote standard discards tend to be, I would say Priestess and Spiritual. Priestess Grasp and like Spiritual, maybe Spiritual Burst. What else would I do? Probably like Priestess Grasp, Spiritual Burst. Because I don't see myself spiritualing turn 1 like a spiritual drive would be the thing. But Ashes tends to be of the opinion that you should be keeping spiritual to threaten a spiritual drive. Because it's Prio 5 annihilate you. Like stun people,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Fair enough.
So what is your opinion on this?
I say it's matchup dependent. Like everything. but I mean, usually there is a having the threat of spiritual drive is relevant. The problem being, if your opponent keeps a burst, you can no longer play spiritual drive anymore.
Correct.
Because if he kept a burst and he plays like a +2 stun guard burst thing, it's suddenly impossible to get through, and you can't really count on that either. So you can't play spiritual shot beat 1 either, since your opponent might as well just do like a drive, and everyone basically keeps a drive in hand. So I respect the keep of the spiritual instead of the switch. The problem being like Switch is just so good, and it tends to be that you discard spiritual, I think. But if you keep it, it's up to your opponent to respect it, right? And sometimes you just have to go with the flow. Like, I'm gonna play a spiritual shot. I'm gonna anti-stun guard.
Yep, 100%
and if you do,
have done that.
and if you do, the opponent probably think you're playing like Sanctimonious Blessing or something, because And if they don't respect the spiritual shot, they might do something like, okay, well, I'm gonna anti plus power, and then they get outspeed because they figured you'd be at prio 1 and you're not prio 3. But yeah, it's up there. It's awkward. But yeah, Priestess is probably the one going down. That said, I'd probably put it so you get back Priestess round 2 because I love Priestess. And both Priestess
Really?
Grasp and Priestess Blessing and Priestess Grasp is amazing, even early game. It's like a risky play, but
Yeah, but then
yeah, it usually
we talk about that threat from spiritual that's real, and I don't think it exists super well. It is matchup dependent. Against someone like Schecter, I do want them to have to spend one more malice, to make sure to be 100%. But most of the time it's like, but you do have a real threat. Like if you dodge, pretty common. If you dodge beat 1, like you do have a real spiritual drive threat the next turn. And I don't know if you have a Priestess Grasp threat that really, like, I don't think your Priestess Grasp or your Priestess outweighs your spiritual threat, if that makes sense.
Fair enough. I mean, you can always put down Sanctimonious.
Well, I think you have to keep Sanctimonious for them because you need that -2 prio in a C. Like your hand is just a grip of -1 prios.
The thing is, you want 3 different kind of values, right? Priority values, and you have that if you have Spiritual Switch and
well, you
one
have
of the
that
others.
if you have Sanctimonious Switch and the others as well, right?
I mean, with that argument, we can talk about putting down Excelsius and Safety. You have 4 different.
Yeah, well, no one's doing that. I mean, come on. I don't think you can. I don't think you can do that. That's a bit crazy. But I do agree that you need to have 3, and the question ends up being, is the -2 of Sanctimonious, better than the, having the switch versus the spiritual, right? I threw that switch.
Yeah, it's once again matchup dependent, right? But the thing is, people tend to think if you're keeping Sanctimonious, they are calculating Sanctimonious dodge. So they go to prio 1 and basically do a burst thing.
Yep.
Which is really fine for them, no matter what you do.
I mean, I do a lot of Sanctimonious dodge, but also the cool part of that is you get like Sanctimonious Blessings and anti-stun guard.
I mean, sure, you can play a Sanctimonious Blessing, but it still loses to burst.
Yeah. The thing is, if you keep Sanctimonious dodge and they calculate for it and go for a prio 1 burst, then your spiritual shot just blows them up.
I mean,
that's a good point. Oh crap! I don't know. I refuse to believe that you convinced me. Hold on.
I mean, once again, like I said, if you're up against a fast character, I would never keep spiritual. I mean, against a character that has +1 stat line on like all his styles or her styles, don't keep spiritual. Well, it's just a dead card. It's crazy. Against characters that have.
Yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah, against characters that have like +0, but like tricky effects, spiritual becomes a real threat. Against characters that has a stun guard of 2 or 3, like Cesar, for example, spiritual once again becomes like not that good because he usually has the stun guard sustain your attack, and if you start trading beat 1, I think Cesar is kind of happy about that.
Yes.
So know your matchup with Magdelina, and sometimes this will take a bunch of games before you like get into. Oh, I get it now. I have to like be defensive until like level 2, then I can go on the offense, or I have to be like offensive from the get-go because this opponent has we talked about Demetras, like Prio +2, Prio +3 on all his cards.
Yes.
And it's not even funny because he, in addition to that, he has his tokens. I'm just gonna have no Prio. And the thing about Magdelina, you have to know that your level also gives you stun guard, which is
huge.
It's amazing. It's amazing in those niche matchups.
So let's then move to one of the most unique bases in the game, right? So blessing is range 1 to 2, power is not applicable, prio 3, guard 3. On hit, you and the opponent regain 3 life, and you regain a trance. So this, first of all, her change to her leveling moved blessing from unplayable to extremely good.
Yeah. You in some way you can say that blessing in some bits just reads hit, you win the bit, congratulations.
Yep.
Yeah.
This speeds up your leveling by an entire turn and can null a beat. And oh, by the way, in this range deficient character happens to have 1 to 2 range. Oh, and the same prio as both dodge and strike.
So the most appealing thing to blessing is that it has guard 3, so that's a lot of guard, and it's a style that heals you and heals your opponent, but you don't really care about healing your opponent. Like if they are at 20 life, they can stay at 20 life, and if they took like damage from you, they're probably like at 18 life or 19 life, and it's whatever. And you being at 20 life, it's much more important. Or you being like at 70 life or something like that, it's much more important for you.
The way I like to think of that is that you healing them for 3 doesn't usually change your time to kill, right? Because you're so powerful late. Like healing them 3 doesn't usually mean that you have to get another attack to win.
Yeah, exactly. And you can also just like so if you play for example, if you play a blessing and you heal them for say like 2 life, right? You can just when you are level 3, level 4, you can just anti for power, and then you just mitigate that 2 life that you heal them.
So blessing is super interesting in Magdelina. It works like with 4 of her 5 styles, kind of well. People don't tend to play Sanctimonious Blessing like later at the game, but I mean later game. But it's actually like playable if you're at an even life total, like you have dashed around and maybe hit a safety blessing before or stuff like that. But giving a blessing +2 range makes it amazing, but it's difficult to get there. Meanwhile, Excelsius, the movement is relevant. We already talked about the fun thing that you can, if it's a fully melee-focused character, you can push them back and like stay in a corner, and you still gain levels for standing in a corner. The problem with Magdelina is that you can't really hit at range.
Correct. Except for Sanctimonious, but yes.
Yeah, I know, but it's like it's the one style that's not that good, but it's there to complement her styles, right? So you actually like can hit at range. So like Excelsius Blessing's fine, Sanctimonious Blessing's fine, Safety Blessing is like amazing early game if your opponent is forced into or like is a real close combat.
I'm just trying to talk myself out of Safety Blessing on beat 1. I'm like, it's going to lose to this, and it's very obvious. But all I ever want to do on turn 1 is Safety Blessing every time, and I have to talk myself out of it.
The problem is just it's very obvious. That's just it. It's like a prior to style, and they can.
It's like an Aurora Grasp. Like okay, here we go.
Yeah, like there's a lot of things that like destroys Safety Blessing, but it's there.
The thing,
it's kind of like if you're go ahead.
On bit 1, because you are 1 square away, so your Safety Blessing is already on max range. So if they have like even like move 1, you're immediately out of range and you're just taking damage
Oh, yeah.
for free.
100%. But if they're going for that max power strike because your Magdelina can't really contest it, Safety Blessing is going to blow out those max power beat 1
Yes.
strikes.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I
Right,
mean,
it's gonna
unless
lose
it's
every
a slow
burst, though.
strike. Unless it's a slow strike, in which case they actually hit you after you hit bless them, which is kind of funny.
That hurts too. Yeah, that hurts too.
That would have to be a very slow strike, right? Like a minus.
I mean, -2 prior
Inevitable
strikes,
strike.
they exist.
Yeah, they do. Oof.
I mean,
Oh, and they
And
clash your
it's not-
Sanctimonious dodge too. Man,
yeah.
-2 power strike. Actually pretty good at it.
So there is like an argument to be made, like, what's your beat 1? Oh, it's Safety Blessing, and your opponent plays Clockwork Shot. And I mean, it's not that bad, since I mean you get your blessing off and you get your trance counter and stuff like that. But I mean, they hit a Clockwork Shot.
Well, but I mean,
and
it
the game
doesn't
is
matter
on.
because you take 3 damage, you have 3 stun guard, and you gain 3 life. Like
I
that's
mean,
actually
but
the
you gain
best
your life.
possible outcome,
You
right?
No. You gain your life before, so you actually gain no life, and then you get hit for 3, so you go to 17.
Isn't that just a wash
Since-
though? To level up against Cadenza, and only take 3 damage against Cadenza. I would take that.
How you see, but it's better to do a Priestess Blessing or stuff like that. Maybe
Sure.
not.
Yeah.
I don't know.
That's true.
Yeah. Priestess Blessing
So-
is against like slow characters like Cadenza, Mikhail, and stuff like that. It's just it's very nasty. Yeah.
So, how often, and I don't know if this is a holdover from early Blessing, and just I guess for anybody listening or watching, old Magdelina used to take all of your trance whenever she leveled up. She no longer does that. You keep extra trance. So, Blessing actually accelerates you permanently. But there is that question of like, if we're gonna look at like keeping spiritual on turn 1 and doing like a surprise spiritual, it makes our blessing worse because they now have damage to heal, right?
Yeah.
Not too much worse, but noticeably worse.
Yeah.
I
so
mean,
one
yeah.
thing. Yeah, let me just because this is a very very long discussion that I have with Twy.
Yes, we argue about this all the time.
Yeah, because I think Twy overvalues blessing, and I'm able to agree that I maybe undervalue blessing a little bit. But if I hit them with spiritual on bit 1, or if I hit them like on the first 3 beats, then for me blessing is immediately a dead card, and I will not play a blessing because like we have already traded a damage, so I'll just need to keep trading damage and keep at least if I can't be healthy, right, because I am trading damage, at least to be like on par with their HP, because then my levels will come up and the my opponent will not be able to keep up with me.
Yeah, but I think that's a lose. Like your whole character is designed to not make that easy. It's obviously possible, but your weakness is supposed to be that you can't win those trades outside of spiritual. Like once your spiritual is down, you're not really trading outside of priestess and switch, and like switch is kind of going to be hard to use there. You know,
Yeah, sure.
like
Also
it's
Excelsius,
possible,
yeah.
but it's almost impossible.
Also Excelsius. So for example, with Excelsius Grasp, which is kind of fast already on level 1.
Yeah, it's
pretty
good.
Yeah, you can hit them and get out of the way so that they cannot hit you back, for example.
In theory.
In theory, yeah. And I would also like to point out to Twy, you should check a game that Charles has played, Magdelina versus Kimby, in which Charles is playing Magdelina and he wins on beat 6 or beat 7 or something like that. Just smashing Kimby beat after beat after beat. It's an amazing game.
I'm still gonna call that exceptional piloting rather than Magdalena having some secret ability that we're not aware of. Right? It's possible. Don't get me wrong. To like, and I look, I have done some crazy planned out class change off of like starting off on a priestess or a like an Excelsius dodge, which is ordinarily terrible, to then clash into an Excelsius strike and then finally get my Excelsius blessing. Stuff like that is possible, but it's so far removed from the norm that but this is where I want to bring that up. We disagree the most is I think blessing is better. Like the blessing game is better than the surprise spiritual early game because I feel like I can't. That it's so hard for me to lose later if I level up to level 2, level 3. Like I don't have to do anything to win once I'm level 3, level 4.
Sure.
You know?
Yeah, I get it. So I feel like the truth lies somewhere in between what you're saying. Like the spiritual game is still strong, and the threat is real at the beginning of the game. But blessing is not a dead card at the late game. It's just harder to pilot correctly. So I had a matchup where I was dead basically to the
Let me
finisher.
interject real fast there. If my spiritual stuns, I don't care
Yeah.
about the damage. Like spiritual stunning them, the damage that I dealt doesn't matter to me whatsoever. I'm happy to blessing and heal it up because
Yeah.
spiritual is essentially a dodge if I stun them. You know.
Yeah.
Fair enough.
But
Fair
he's
enough.
talking about if you trade with a spiritual.
Yeah, I get it. I get it. So there are some times that blessing becomes more relevant, like Excelsius blessing, still pushing your opponent away, taking no
Yep.
damage is relevant, and then you gain a trans counter. If you're going up against a character that has no range, you actually have some range, like we talked about earlier in Sanctimonious. And even if it's like one of the most boring games you can play, where you do shadowboxing at the edge of the board, both players,
Yes. Yes.
it's still winning for Magdelina, so shadowboxing is fine.
As long as they don't have the options to hit you either, shadowboxing is incredible. It's when they like
Yeah.
push you to range 6, and
Yeah.
they have every option to hit you, and you have checks notes, no options to hit them for like the next 2 turns. It's like
So
safety or dodge.
yeah,
Not both.
and what I would say is like, remember I said like Sanctimonious Blessing is a thing once you're at level, once you're like higher level as well. If you can get your Sanctimonious Blessing to like hit up to 5 spaces, and you're up against a melee character that then like tries to dash to get in, you gains an extra level for that. It's like insane.
Yeah, so if that occurs, it's super hard for them to come back. I will agree.
Yeah, but the thing is, now I've talked about like beats that
Those are
becomes
rare.
more like those are rare beats, and it's not like you lose those beats. It's not like I'm trading blessing for whatever he plays, and then I take 3 damage, so I go down nothing, and I give my opponent 3 life because that's a 3 life loss, basically, right?
Yep.
So blessing becomes much harder to play at the late game.
Agreed.
Like a um, well designed card. It's relevant against a few characters where like Tanis, it's kind of still good against, because if you play a priestess blessing or something, or a safety blessing, you can just like, if you go up here, we both heal, I gain a token, and I become stronger and stronger. And then I can like go to one of your puppets or whatever with safety trigger. Um, but
There's a
it's
thing that I
difficult.
like about late game blessings that
Yeah,
comes up. I really like if I can swing a blessing that I'm not going to get blown out for if they don't dodge, but I think they're going to dodge. I'm happy to throw away a blessing
yeah,
that isn't going to lose me outright the beat if I'm wrong, right? But to like clash a dodge if I'm still at a level that's possible, or if they're going to
yeah,
dodge, like throwing away blessing in those places because you don't. at higher levels you won't lose by that much.
Yeah, that's fair. And
There's
like I
also
said,
a line. Yeah, just there's also a line that's, for example, if you know for a fact that they can lethal you, say from 6 life, and if you're blessing, then you are at 9 life, and they cannot lethal you anymore. And them being at 8 life or 9 life or 10 life is the same, because you're just going to smack them for that much
and
amount.
that's like that priestess blessing or that safety thing. That same thing where
then blessing just buys you an extra turn, which is like
huge for Magdelina.
Exactly.
Can
So
mean the victory,
if you're
for the
if
match,
you're at
right?
those levels, it's super. I mean, if it saves you from a finisher or something, or it just gives you that one extra level. So let's say you're at level 3 and you're about to ding level 4 if you hit or miss blessing, whatever. Then safety blessing is good, priestess blessing is good, spiritual blessing is still bad. But you just do some blessing, and if your opponent gets hit and hits you back and you go down to 1 life, it doesn't matter because you hit them.
Right,
you kill them no matter what.
It's speed 100, hit
then
them
then you go
40.
Yeah, then you go like switch shot or like whatever, spiritual drive. Just go crazy, hit them into the corner, and if they dodge the next beat, you just beat them with whatever you got
Your
left.
styles matter a lot less when you get the higher level, just because they all your real style is these absurd numbers on your levels.
Yeah, exactly. So, and that's kind of why I feel like Excelsius is her best style. Because
I would agree with
it
that
does
as well.
so much.
I think Excelsius is her best style. I think that Sanctimonious is the linchpin style. And it's interesting because I never really thought about it.
Priestess,
Safety and Priestess are almost like you only have one of them. Is not quite, but like they operate. They are one spot. One is early. One is late. Usually, but not always.
Yeah, and the thing is, kind of like what we talked about, Priestess is kind of a interesting thing because if you calculate, and it's in a dream world, right? Priestess is basically +0, +0, -1, -1, 0, right?
Yes.
+0.
Yes, yeah.
Because the armor 2, it's just like, so it's basically switch, which with a heal 1 on hit. It's odd.
It's fine.
This is super odd. That said, Priestess Blessing late game might be like the only way to actually win a beat with Blessing.
True.
So
that has definitely come up. Like heal 4, armor 2, and like not being in danger of dying is definitely relevant.
I mean, okay.
So let's talk about the last
finisher.
thing, finisher. I actually think that this is a pretty well designed finisher on both sides. There are times that I want apotheosis. Let's start with that. Range 1, power 1, priority 4 with a tiebreaker, guard 0. It is ignore guard, and on hit you level up. Sounds awful, but you get your level with that.
Yeah.
And so really this is just, almost the only way to get to level 5. But that is super irrelevant. It's mostly just a fast melee strike that ignores guard, which is totally fine as a finisher.
So I think the most important and standout ability from that finish is the ignore guard, and the next are just like nice things tucked into it. So giving Magdelina the ability to ignore guard at command is very, very powerful. It's already at prior 4, and at the level that you are playing it, it should be like prior 7 or prior 8. And the prior 7, prior 8 style that says ignore guard is very valuable.
Yes, right. Now the problem with it, and that ignore guard is specifically against like certain, certain big stun guard styles. I don't usually use apotheosis. Like the hit on level up is cool and totally never relevant. It is cool to get to level 5, but it never really matters.
Yeah.
So, let's talk about the one that I use the most,
yeah.
which
So
is
the thing is that ignore card is a way to have a no bid, right? And Magdelina likes no bids. Does you level up or you don't level up? It doesn't really matter, like you say. Like it's a nice thing. It's a nice thing. If you did it and you get to level 5, then yeah, okay, sure, that's cool.
my
But
main problem with Apotheosis is like it still loses. Like you have this option. It feels like it's not quite ignore guard, so you need a reason to specifically ignore guard against a character that can get like 10 stun guard, right? Because otherwise, something like Spiritual Strike is pretty much ignore guard. Not 100% of the time, but almost.
So what I said about Magdalena's finisher, and I can't remember who I said this to, but I believe it was basically like Apotheosis is the finisher you start the game with, and the other one,
Solar Soul.
Yeah, Solar Soul.
Solar Soul, is the one you end the game with, because there is a very few games where I want to keep Apotheosis. But it's like an upgrade finisher. If I go for the heavy trade game, Apotheosis is a lot better. And the ignore guard might not be relevant. I don't know, but it's still like gain a level on hits. Also, both of Magdalena's styles are basically like the Solar Soul is range 1 to 2, but otherwise both have 2 power since Apotheosis is on hit level up, right?
Oh,
So you actually gain that
I
plus.
didn't realize that. I'm dumb. I
Yeah.
did not even think of that. Like it just rarely comes up. I felt like.
Yeah, but it's like sometimes that one power. I've actually won a game of that +1 power. Just like on hits I trigger and I get +1 power and I win. So it's
Nice.
relevant. But usually what happens is you play until you're like level 2, level 3 somewhere, and then you play your switch for some reason and realize that okay, we're trading off, and then you flip into Solar Soul, which is a more stable finisher. I feel like.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
I feel, and I don't disagree with anything that you said, Nat. There is actually something that you really kind of made me think is I might actually want to start with Apotheosis way more than I do because I almost always want to have Solar Soul as my finisher, but also there is never a game that's going to go by that I'm not going to switch
Yeah.
as Magdalena. Like there is
Yeah.
not one. So starting with Apotheosis is not terrible at all because a lot of times that they're going to put you into finisher, like the turn that they're going to deal damage to get you into the ability to finisher, it's Apotheosis would be a really good one to have on deck, right? To make them not want to do that.
I mean, it's depending on what kind of game you were playing right now. So if it's a trading game where we both go down real fast, I mean, you're playing Magdalena, so real fast is like the first 5 beats or something. If you in 5 beats have taken like 10 damage, then I would probably keep Apotheosis because there is an option for you to trade off. But if beyond that you have still, if like beat 8, beat 9, you still have 10 life each, then it's probably better to go Solar Soul.
Then Solar Soul. Yeah.
Yeah.
I guess that's a fair point. What Charles like is trying to say, I think, is like Apotheosis works like a very very huge comeback potential, and Solar Soul is just like a standard finisher, which I would agree with.
Sure.
Yeah.
I will say that I almost always Solar Soul just because this range 1 to 2 on a character like Maggie is usually the most important part, right? You have a very difficult time hitting people at range because your tools are really limited, and just being able to threaten somebody at range 2 right away, when both Excelsius and Sanctimonious are down, for instance.
Yeah.
This hit of so I guess I should say it. So it's range 1 to 2, power 2, prio 4 with a tiebreaker, 0 guard, has armor 2. On hit, spend any amount of trance for plus power each. I have rarely made like excellent use of this hit effect. I mean, it's come up occasionally, but usually, a 5 power, 6 power
Is enough, yeah.
is enough. And armor 2 is kind of gravy there as well, since it means that you'll have, like, if we do it at level 3, you'll have armor 2, guard 3.
Yeah. You always ever spend trends, or if you're going to stun them, or if you're going to lethal them, because otherwise the armor 2 just ensures that you will trade up.
Yeah, if that's a really good point. If you are not winning the game or stunning them so they don't hit you back, you should not spend trance, because trance is definitely not worth 1 power. It is way more valuable than that.
Yeah. Maybe. So there is a thing where at the end of the round, you still gain your 1 trance. Remember that? So you can actually level up if using a Solar Soul as well. Just for reference.
Wait a minute.
Oh, yeah. Like 1 power is for free. It's essentially what you're saying.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
I mean, yeah, and if you miss, you still can level up, right? So it's good. So if you're at level 3 and have 3 trance counters and use Solar Soul, and you don't hit, you still gain your trance and you still level up.
Yeah.
So,
but even there, because we keep trance now, I mean, there's that cost is still real. Like, I'm not disagreeing in general, but you'd have to be very convinced that you're not going to make it to level 4, which you're probably not if we're using finishers, right? If we're 10 life.
I mean,
life.
Yeah, but if your opponent dashes or dodges or whatever, and you miss with your Solar Soul, you still gain a level. That's what I mean.
Oh yeah.
So next beat, you have like your spiritual shot up with, level 4 stats, which is your real finisher.
Your real finisher, yeah. Next.
Yeah.
So I guess to close out talking about Maggie, I use Maggie a lot as in my own head as like my prime example of a character that plays weird Battlecon, right? Because her flow is so different from like a Hikaru. It's just like the generic brawler, right? You're not. You have to be this really super behind early, and you almost just wade in fearlessly late. That her game flow is so unlike almost anybody else.
Yeah, I agree.
Who else has that? Like Lissandra, but Lissandra is scary even from beat 2 to beat 3. She just gets scarier over time, but not.
Exactly.
Not stacking.
No. Lissandra's kit is something else. Yeah, I think Magdelina, and what it makes a really really fun character for me, or what makes her really really fun for me, is that she really rewards good play, right? If you manage to calculate a bit well and you clash it out, then you get a reward. So like you get a no beat and you get a trance counter. If you win the beat because you just play the spiritual drive and you hard read them and your spiritual drive stuns them, then you get a reward, because not only now you are ahead on life, but you are also like ahead on your game plan, like you getting trance counters and something like that. So stuff like that, right? She really rewards good game knowledge and good play. And
you just described the differences in our Maggie. What do you want to do? You're like, I want to play safe and I want to win. I want to win and outplay. And I'm like, look, I want to get them, and I want to get all the rewards, and she will give you those rewards.
Yeah. So, when considering Maggie, I believe that the truth is once again somewhere in between your extremes. So you have to know your matchup. And Maggie seems like for a new player, Maggie doesn't seem matchup dependent, but you have to know what kind of game you're trying to play for. And a new player doesn't know that. For example, let's pull up some character here. So we have Vanna, for example. How quickly do you have to play against Vanna?
Not that quick. I'd be fine.
Not that quick.
Vanna would seem like an okay matchup, not great. I'd much rather play against like Luke.
right?
that's
You'd
a fair
much
point.
rather play against Luke. Why would you do that? Because Luke is usually considered like slightly better than Lana, right?
Just
He
because
has like this.
we've had that conversation in the old BCO
Oh yeah,
Discord like 100 times, right? About
I know.
clockers and that's a good point. I guess yes, we've talked about it, but we haven't talked about it for other people. Yes, MK, you're good at your job. Yeah, no, that's a good point. Is that Magdelina will be her getting trance is almost better than any other clocker except maybe Marmalade. Um, in that when we have a null beat,
Yeah.
it's so much better for me because I will get just constantly better versus Luke, getting to a point that he's going to get to anyway.
Yeah, exactly. So that's why you consider Luke like an easier matchup.
Yes.
Meanwhile, we talked a bunch about Cadenza, which I can't see here, but he's probably in there somewhere.
Not just
and
Cadenza,
Cadenza,
any slugger that can hit really hard, right?
it really doesn't matter, right? He's just in there as an example, right? Cadenza is a super hard matchup because it takes time for you to get out of usually Magdelina like flips somewhere in the middle where she becomes better than you at everything.
Yes.
And against Cadenza, she starts better than Cadenza in priority, for example.
Yeah.
Which is
the worst.
It's awkward.
Totally irrelevant.
Which is awkward for both Magdelina and for Cadenza. It's like, oh, someone can actually clash me. It's kind of scary. But Maggie actually like builds upon that. So at the end game, she should beat everyone at everything. And characters that can compete with her at her level 5 characteristic, like, oh, I have +5 to all my stats, you can't beat me. And then you're up against Marmalade, for example, which says, you can't hit me, I hit you for 2. And you're like, oh, damn it.
Okay, so what about someone where it's a little bit more interesting? And this might be more like almost maybe a better example. What about Kalistar? Right. So that's eventually you can compete with Kali. Kind of.
I mean, most people tend to play Kalistar a lot more defensively than I prefer, but I'm like crazy at times. So,
I mean, I'm me, so obviously I'm like, how about if we flared level 1 and then we just tried to win before I died?
Yeah. Okay. So you can play crazy and you can play like insane. But yeah. So Kalistar, I meant like playing Kalistar in flame mode for a bunch of beats, and Magdelina has stuff in her kit to play against that, but Blessing becomes a difficult choice to play against Kalistar,
Sure.
right?
Yeah.
Because you really need those trans counters, because she's like killing you and you have to gain levels to compete. On the other hand, you don't want to heal.
I don't think you can play Blessing against Kali, if we're honest. If she's in Elemental, I don't like. She's balanced around the fact that she is killing herself. You can't really afford to give. Ooh.
Yeah.
You need you.
And
that is you. That's a very good point.
Yeah, and suddenly you're like, okay, can I actually play Blessing? And the answer is, I mean, you can, but it becomes a lot harder. You have to consider, like, your life totals becomes different valued than it's against like any other characters, and that's why each matchup in Battlecon, and that's why I love this game, because each matchup becomes dependent on like both characters and like the small things that happen between each and every one of them. But like we said, okay, Blessing is a dead card, maybe.
Maybe. I mean, not on like
maybe.
turn 1 or 2, but like.
So
killing Kalistar just gives me
against Kalistar, if you're playing like the hardcore Kalistar, consider this attack pair. I know it's crazy, but Spiritual Blessing, because no one plays it.
I don't know if you know this, but I specifically have a screenshot I use all the time where it's Spiritual Blessing.
Yeah, fair enough. I mean, you can get clashed out, and you're at range 2, and Spiritual Blessing becomes your last out, I guess. But it's not like your first go-to attack pair. I hope
Ever.
if you do, you either calculate a clash or do something I hadn't thought of right now.
Yeah. Or you just need like a second fast grasp, kinda.
Yeah. So yeah,
It's
there
not
are a
optimal,
bunch of
no.
things you have to think about. Yeah.
Yeah.
In
Yeah.
But
Callister,
anyway.
Priestess is very, very good.
Priestess
And
is
Safety
good.
as well.
Safety is
Yeah,
very
and
good.
Safety is very good because it basically says your supernova finisher does not exist.
So who would
And
you say is like the best matchup for Maggie, and who would you not maybe just like in the top 3 best matchups that you would want to see as Maggie, and the worst 3, you know, because like Luke comes to mind as someone as I am only too willing to play as Maggie.
I think any clocker that is not marmalade is Maggie's favorite dish because it's like, oh, I like no bits. Oh, I like no bits too. But what do you do with your no bits? I just get this resource. What about you? Well, I get all the stats. How about that?
And we say not against Marmalade. I don't think it's that lopsided. I think Marmalade's ahead there, but it's just not. We're not like way deep unwinnable in the hole either.
No, it's just tricky because you
Yeah.
can like avoid you for days. And
Yeah.
stuff like, well, you can have 10 prior, but I am the active player is very hurtful.
You know,
Yeah.
it's funny because last time we talked about if I had to choose like someone who I think is actually probably extremely good against Maggie's, dodging comes to mind.
there is a huge problem with Daijin against Magdalena, and that is that Magdalena gains 3 wishes.
Hey, you know what though? Like stuff like just hitting her for 4 a lot, right? Like dodging's probably not the best example. Someone like Alexian
I mean,
clobbers her.
okay, so let's say you're playing a Daijin. You remember last time we talked about like there are 2 moves that you kind of don't use, the teleport one. Have you ever thought about like a spiritual strike that hits all over the board at level
No,
3?
no,
No, it's kind of
I've
scary.
not thought about that. I tried, and my brain recoiled in horror. Can you
So
imagine getting hit by a spiritual strike at like level 4? But
yeah,
like, why
I
would you
mean,
do that when I can just do a spiritual shot with +4 power?
but I mean, spiritual strike at full board range, because you can actually get stunned out of a spiritual shot. Not a lot of characters can do this, but Daijin is one that can. But spiritual strike you can't do anything about, and if you teleport around the board, it's
Right.
just bananas.
You teleport in, you smack them, then you teleport to somewhere
Out,
where
yeah.
they cannot hit you. And like, yeah, I like this
And
bit. Can we do this more?
Uh, because we all 3 of us played a lot of BCO. Caesar's a really good example of something interesting that we were talking about earlier. That you want to go through the game and like you just need to make sure you don't die before you win, which like sounds obvious, but it's not really. Like you can't out trade. Caesar's really good because unkillable in this matchup is really outrageous for Caesar. I think it
yes
goes
and
from
no.
making the matchup should be even to unfavored for Maggie.
Yes and no. You also like. There are a few players who play Caesar at such a level that I'm scared of Caesar, because they tend his downbeat becomes super scary, and if we're talking Magdalena specifically, you can hit every blessing you want when his downbeat is on.
Yes, but like
Because
even still, you can't just win on like a spiritual like against any other character, and he also has those upbeats that means that, like, if you don't actually kill him, he can kill you on the crackback with stun immunity.
You have
You know.
safety. You have safety. Safety is like crazy.
He's unkillable.
I don't care. You have blessing and safety until you're at levels where he can't
He has
compete, and then you
suppression
just beat him
too
down.
early.
I mean, yes, and you have safety.
It's one card.
Safety is
One
so
card.
good.
I still
yeah.
think this matchup is unfavored for Maggie, and I think it would not be that unfavorable if not specifically for unkillable with suppression. I think suppression makes it hard, but that whole, even if we get there late, I can't just win on a crackback,
I don't know. I can't recall Caesar's kit fully, but I don't think he has like a lot of guard other than his UA and stuff. And
I mean, his guard is like 1, 2, 3 or something.
He has a fair
It's
amount
super
of guard.
silly. I mean, his
So-
stun guard goes up in like increments of 1. I remember. So it's and he has -1 and -2 priority. So priestess is like you hit and you gain the armor, and he's sad because
and he can't do anything about it yet. Then safety, which is like really, really amazing in this matchup, and also spiritual, which is kind of okay because you will always go faster, and the spiritual actually can stun out Caesar.
Yeah, and there is some funny things where you go like spiritual grasp into his level 4 protocol. And then we'll go before him, and he's super sad. He was like, "I'm going first," and you're like, "Nope."
Does fuel? No, fuel doesn't do the same thing it used to, right? Where you can't do the fueled clash to miss the downbeat anymore, right?
Fueled clash.
Yeah, so you used to be able to do a fueled, like, clash them on a fueled. I think this is BCO, where you would gain the extra threat. You should be stunned, but if you clash them, because it was on reveal, you're no longer stunned. It's not anymore, but
if you're stunned, you can. Fueled is like.
Yeah, so
you
it
could,
used to cycle through the threats, where like you had no benefit at 4. So like on the beat that you were gonna be your downbeat, if you fueled in BCO, it would put you back to level 1. So if you managed to clash them on your downbeat with a fueled something, you would actually not be stunned that turn. That is no longer how it works.
That's not how it works. No. So you still become stunned because it's just that recycled. You lose it, but
now.
Yeah.
Anyway, though, I think that the level 4 protocol is a really good example of where safety is like good against a finisher. I'm trying to think of a really solid one. It's Red Moon Range.
Red Moon Range.
Yeah, I mean anything that's just super fast, super like.
So I guess level 4 protocol is super fun to just grasp him out of. Like I said, not a lot of characters can do it. Maggie is one of the few.
Well, I have a bunch of old screenshots that, like, with Rifflem 13 prio grasps.
I mean,
that being said, is there anything else you want to bring up on Maggie or characters similar to Maggie?
I mean, there are no characters similar to Maggie in that way. I mean, there are characters that like slowly becomes better as the game goes on, that gains stuff like that. Arya puts tokens onto play and stuff like that, but it's not at the level of Maggie, right? Because Maggie just becomes like a monster.
Is Runica really the opposite of Maggie?
Not really, because Runica goes backwards as well. She can repair her stuff Maggie never goes down in level.
Sure.
So not the opposite. Also, Ruinka you can lock down by locking down like the 1 or 2 artifacts she needs to
Have
be
her
in
boost the
play.
phase goggle?
Usually, but not always. Sometimes the Stungard one is like the most important one to remove. But
Well, the Sunguard one's hard to use for Rinka because it's deactivate on hit, right?
yeah, but
Yeah.
sometimes like Stungard is
yeah, very very important. Yeah, and the thing that gets you to life back is a very good combo with the stun guard.
Out of the deflector, yeah, that's true.
Yeah, you can stun me and I'll gain 2 life, or you cannot stun me and I'll just hit you back. It's a tough choice.
All right.
in the end you have to fit everything.
Sure.
But yeah, but back on Magdelina. I mean, she's just like a very very unique character, right? Like on the escalation, on all the escalation characters, she's like the most, in a way, evergreen. But at the same time, her kit is complex enough that she's very fun to play, and she plays very differently from versus whoever she has across the map.
Yeah, what I will definitely say on Maggie is, as far as a UA goes, this is about as uncomplicated as it really gets, right? Like it's easy to understand the basic concept, um, but with just that thing, which is super simple to understand, not overly complicated, her play style is so much different because that whole escalation thing, that she's unlike any other regular Battlecon player or fighter.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think the most difficult thing to grasp for someone that wants to learn to play Magdalena is to just keep ranged one, be on their face all the time, and it's very counterintuitive, right? Because you want to bide your time, you want to just like to waste time and waste beats until you get your levels up. But if you are not like in their face all the time, then your options are really limited, and more time than not, you will just end up giving free damage to them just
Correct.
because your positioning is so bad, and you have to waste like 2 beats or 2.5 beats just getting into a good position.
Yep. Not being able to
And that's
being in a
very
range where you can't dodge back in is with Maggie is super
for example.
scary because your options are
Yeah.
so limited that a
Yeah.
lot of times they're going to be
And
face.
that's the thing that's very very counterintuitive, because you look at their you read their UA, you look at their styles and you say, okay, so I just need to like stay away and stay safe, and I'll bide my time, and then I'll get to their face. And it's like, no, you need to stay on their face, so your
Even at level
options
1,
are
even at level
open.
even at level 0,
Even level 1, yeah.
right in their face.
Yeah, that's the bit that's more counterintuitive to our kids.
Yeah.
All right. Anything else anybody else want to bring it up?
I think we're good.
All right. Ash, MK, appreciate you both.
Play Maggie, she's fun.
Yeah, you should definitely try Maggie. I think she's a blast.
Yeah. Okay.
Thanks, everyone.
See you around, guys. Bye.